Welcome to Where the Music Never Dies, a space devoted to the stories, spirit, and legacy of my brother, Joel William Moss, lovingly known by many as Joe-Willy or Jolie or Hey Bro. For more than 15 years, podcasting has been my way of connecting with people and through those people, hearing their stories. With the passing of my brother, and most recently with my husband, I am finding the stories others share with me provides me additional memories to hold on to. This time, the storytelling is personal. I chose this format because I need to walk through my own grief journey, and I'm going to do that with people who are friends of my brother's. They're going to tell us the real stories of Joel and maybe some of the things he didn't even want us to know. We'll find out. Joel was driven by passion and the helping of others find their best qualities. One of the things that I do know about my brother is that he met our guest, Jim Mastrianni. And Jim, you're involved in so many things.
Yeah.
You are a man of the world if you read your bio online. But the thing that Joel was really attracted to was your technology and your music and your passion to help others like he did.
Yeah.
So, from what I understand, you guys started something called the Producers Group.
Yeah, the Saratoga Producers Group. Yeah.
So, what was that all about?
Well, it was usually it was Monday nights, which is when most musicians are available because they're typically not gigging. And it was three, four of us who were aspiring producers and then with Joel and Dave Maswick was part of that as well. And we'd get together at my house, at my studio, and we would produce music. And we would record and write, and we would arrange and mix and do the whole thing to really just to for the love of the craft. It was kind of like having a band, a group of dudes to get together. And then what was nice about it was I was a real beneficiary of being able to work at a level that I hadn't worked at in the past. That I had moved from the neighboring town, from Greenfield, back to the city of Saratoga Springs. My wife and I, Christine, we started here in Saratoga after we graduated from college, and then we lived here for many years, then moved out to Greenfield as we started our family, and then we came back. And so when we came back, I had a larger space to dedicate for the recording studio. And so when I did that, it really became a more professional space, and that I wanted to work at a more professional level. And it just happened to be at about the same time as if there was a call out to central casting that I needed, a mentor, because the recording arts as a discipline, as a profession, is really a mentor driven vocation. I mean, you can get a college degree, you can get a master's degree in it. But a lot of it is just being an apprentice to a mentor. And I was looking to get my skills up to the next level. And so, out of central casting came, hey, Mr. Music Producer guy who really did work with a lot of people on this, and at a very, very high level. And so we became, best of friends, and we just learned, from one another. And that was the wonderful thing about our friendship.
Right.
Yeah.
So, the interesting thing is, I knew my brother worked with a lot of different people, a lot of high level people.
Sure.
But we knew it, but he never really shared much of it with us. Every once in a
Sure.
while, he would say, "Oh, yeah, I just finished an album with Tony Bennett." And we'd look at him and go, "Wow, isn't that great?" And he'd go,
Yeah.
"Yeah, it was great." And
It's
then he
work.
told me that he was working with, a local musician and who I'd never heard of. And then he'd share the music with me. I'd go, "Well, hey, that's as great as a Tony Bennett."
Yeah.
And that's what he loved so much about doing is helping create. for others. So you've been a businessman a good portion of your life,
Yes.
but was music always something that you were interested in
Yeah.
developing?
Absolutely. So, I mean, I've been a musician since the age of 7 when I started taking piano lessons. I played in rock bands through high school. There are videos of me as a 16-year-old playing a battle of the bands on YouTube. And so I've always done this. But I made a choice when I was about 21 or 22 years old that this was going to be something I do along with the social and business work that I do. Um, and what had happened was I played in a really hot college band. And so that last summer of college, I decided to go on the road with the band. Now, every previous summer since I was 16 years old, I had worked in my father's business. Okay. And so I'd started programming computers when I was 16 years old for his business. And so he would pay me a reasonable rate, a fair rate. So then I went out, and that last summer of college, I went out and I went and played in this rock band, and we were a great band. We were a jam band. We played in Burlington, Vermont, and we worked really, really hard. And I came out of the end of the summer with like $500 in my pocket. Whereas previously, I would come out of the end of the summer and I'd have like maybe $2,500 in my pocket, and then that would, ride me through my college,
Sure.
expenses, my little fun money. So, so so I kind of realized right then and there, wow, I worked really, really hard over here. I worked hard in both places, but that the rewards were different. Um, and I realized that, oh, and I was very good, but I didn't think I was good enough. And we know that many are called in this profession, but few are chosen. And so I was just looking at the odds, going, well, I have this sociology degree. I'm a technology guy. I have these really great offers, or this great opportunities in applying technology into the human services world, or I can go play in bands and really, really struggle. So that choice was easy for me. And so what I've done is I've just designed my life to be able to have this career, and it's a very high level career that I have, but then also make enough time that I have music in it. And so in my 20s and 30s, I still played in bands. And then when I got to my 40s, when I had a little more financial security, that's when I really started getting involved in music production. Because music production isn't cheap
Right.
if you're gonna own a studio. You got to have a space, you got to have that space treated, you got to own a bunch of gear. And but when I turned 40, that's when I kind of really got serious into it. And then and then I just turned 55. So when I was I've known Joel for a decade. So when I was 45, that's when when we met. Well, we'd known of each other previously, but we hadn't really met.
Right.
Because we had mutual friends. Rick Bolton is our mutual friend.
Right.
And so then, I really wanted to really get good at being a music producer. And that's when Joel and I found each other.
And you've been very, very active with Cafe Lena for a long time.
Yes,
I know
yes.
when I first met you, you were on the board for
Yep.
Cafe Lena.
Yep.
Um, and for those people who are tuning in for the first time and have no idea what Cafe Lena is, please Google it because you will be immensely surprised. And if you can get up to Saratoga Springs, you absolutely have to go there because it really is where the music never dies,
Yeah, it's a magical place. Yeah.
and a wide range of musicians. In fact,
Yes.
my son and I just had this discussion that when he would come up and visit my brother, he would go to the cafe with him, and sometimes, he would say, "Why am I going? This isn't the kind of music I want to even listen
Right.
to."
Right.
But at the end of the evening, he was so excited that he
Yeah.
did listen because it was a different quality for him.
Yeah. 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 And I think, going a little off tangent, but I think this is important. And that, as you know, my heart is near and dear to Cafe Lena. I went there the first time in 1990. and fell in love with the place, and would go periodically. And I had decided at one point, I said, oh well, this is one of the things I want to do. I want to get involved with Cafe Lena. And so this Saratoga chamber has a really neat program called Leadership Saratoga, which trains professionals to go out and work on nonprofit boards. So I did that program with the express goal, with the goal of I'm going to go serve on the board of Cafe Lena. And certainly one of my agendas was, and we're going to make some cool changes. And so I was on the board for 8 years. I was the chairman for four. The real highlights of my tenure as the chairman is that I came in with a new business model, and the new business model was the first time in its 60 some odd year history that it showed a profit or a surplus, because it's a not-for-profit. And I said, look, we can turn this into $1 million a year business. And I almost got laughed out of the room, and we wound up doing that. And that continues,
Yes,
and we were
yes,
we were really able to turn a a nonprofit organization that was almost a charity into a thriving nonprofit that is able to generate revenue both through ticket sales and by people donating, because the arts, you always need to have
sure.
donation in the arts, support a staff, support health insurance, support a retirement plan, and support year-end bonuses, and have a real business. And so we did that. So that was my first 2 years. My second 2 years was, as the chairman, was responding to the pandemic, and where we had a real pivot, and figured out. And this is a team effort. I was ahead of the ship, and certainly I set some of the direction, but this was certainly a team effort. And you can't give enough credit to Sarah Craig over there.
Oh, absolutely.
And yeah, and we were and the cafe was able to thrive through the pandemic, in the worst of circumstances, where venues had really difficult times surviving. Cafe Lane was able to thrive, and it was because of the audio and the video system that Joel and I worked on together.
Yes,
You know,
absolutely. And it's
and,
wonderful because you can be wherever you want to be and see
yeah,
a
that's right.
live
And tune
show.
in. Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
uh, I've I've invited friends over for an evening, and I'm telling them that we're having live music, and they'll look at me like,
Yeah,
seriously,
right. Yeah,
and I'm all hooked up
that's
and
great.
big screen TV, and we
Yeah,
we watch
yeah, yeah,
Cafe
yeah,
Lena.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
And the sound is good because your brother set it all up. you know.
well,
Well,
and and you
and
know,
that's a great segue, by the
yeah,
way, how we first really met each other, because it's a great story.
sure,
And
tell
and
me.
the and so the story is that, so here I am on the board, and I'm this agent of change, and we are changing this organization. And Joel was coming on as like a super volunteer, like a Obi-Wan Kenobi volunteer, saying, we're gonna record everything. He wasn't we were he was At first, he was just starting with the audio. We hadn't gotten to the video yet. And but we're gonna record everything, because what if we had the recordings when Bob Dylan played there? We're gonna archive it, we're gonna broadcast, it's gonna be great, it's gonna be great. So then he came with his list of requirements, and it was a mountain of money when we had none.
Yeah.
And so at the board, they said, hey, who wants to go tell the seven-time Grammy Award winning, really smart, cool guy who's a friend of us and friend to all of our musical heroes, that he can't have the money? And so, of course, I said, well, I'll do it. And so we had a meeting, and I will tell you, your brother was mad at me, mad, screaming. I mean, mad, because I came in as just we were just two unmovable forces, you
Sure.
know, and just hitting each other. But eventually, what we did was, I said to him, well, look, there's something in the middle. we can find a solution to this. We just can't afford that. But if we look at the goals of what you're trying to achieve, okay, what is it that you're trying to do? And then, well, this is the money we have. This is the infrastructure we already have. How do we get this all to come together? Then we can solve all of our problems. And that's what we did. And that's the system that's still in place today. That he, broadcasted and archived a ton of shows. And I think what that showed was at the time was that, well, this Mastrianni guy is a pain in my butt, but he cares about the same things that I care about, and he's really looking to come to a solution. And I think that's what led to the mutual respect that we had for one another and our friendship. So, and you know what else too, and we got to know each other, and he did a smart thing. He called me up. He said, "Well, look, we're going to have to work together. So let's go out to lunch." you know and that was smart on his
Right.
part. And I remember at the time kind of rolling my eyes going, all right, fine, yes, sure. All right, yeah, all right, I'm expecting a charm offensive. But we didn't get that. What it was just a friendship. And what we realized was that a lot of things we cared about, a lot of the same things: our love for music, our love for the arts, for creativity, for music production, that whole process, the recording arts and sciences, but really most importantly was family.
Yes, absolutely. And the interesting part about my brother, even from a very young age, if he wanted something, he was extremely vocal,
Oh
uh,
yeah.
and he would just push, push, push. And it always was a joke amongst my, older brother and myself that we needed Joel to go to our parents to ask for things because Joel
Right.
could make it happen.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and we always wondered, like, how does he do it? And we can't. Um, but that was the role he played. But he did also understand the art of negotiation. And
Yeah.
sometimes it didn't look like it because when he was really passionate about something, don't get in his way. He's just going to let you know. But he then could take that step back and say, okay, I can be passionate all I want, but if I don't get your support, it's never going to happen.
Well, right. 100% of nothing is still nothing. And so yeah, so sometimes, and this is I think any person like Joel who has lived an effective life, it figures out that, all right, well, is this the hill I want to die on, or what am I willing to compromise on? And there are some things too that, like, and he would bring me in on projects that he was working on, and there's some things he wouldn't compromise on. And there was one project I was like, I didn't agree with him, his approach. I said, Joel, look, I mean, I'm your buddy here, man, but I don't think you're going the right way, and I don't think you're hearing what you think you're hearing on this, and I think the customer has a valid concern. And he goes, yeah, I don't care. you know and he was at a phase in his life too where he wasn't going to take any BS from anybody.
Right. Right.
And in this particular case, there was some BS coming down the pike, but they did have some valid concerns, and so we didn't agree on everything you know
Well, in a good relationship, you don't agree on everything.
no.
Um, it's one of the things that I've looked back on in the last couple of weeks. I had this wonderful relationship with my husband, but we certainly did not agree on everything.
Sure.
And
Sure.
now I can sort of laugh about it um, as I go through the office that we share and look and say, how did I look at that pile of cord sitting on your desk for years and years? But it makes me laugh, and it makes me
Yeah.
also realize that those are the compromises. And I'm sure
Yeah.
that's what you saw with Joel.
Yeah.
Um, so Joel lived most of his career life on the West Coast. And then he came to New York and started working on Broadway shows while commuting back and forth to Saratoga. But he fell in love with the essence of Caffe Lena. And um, what I found when I would walk into the cafe, people really understood his love and they could share it with just about anybody. And it was like, how do you know that? And they said, you just have to get to know him. You just watch him do his work. You watch him when he communicates with the performers. And that was a side of my brother that I never saw.
Yeah.
And um, he started a lot of different music venues at the cafe as well. I mean, who would have thought jazz would be part of Cafe Lena?
Yeah, right, right. Well, interestingly, so yeah, I mean, when we were having these discussions on the board of when I wanted to expand the business model, we had these very interesting discussions, and we would set up like, the 2 by 2 matrix of what we would do, what we absolutely won't do, and what we might do, that kind of thing in the 4 boxes. And so certainly, American music, Americana, roots music was part of it. And I think that jazz is part of that. Jazz is an American art form. It is a wonderful representation of what the very best of this country can do. And what this country stands for, the combining of several different cultures into one art form. So certainly, jazz was on the list, and folk music, and then we had these we had these funny conversations about, all right, so would we ever book a Britney Spears, as a thought experiment? Well, if she was doing like an acoustic record, maybe, and that's not unlike like Taylor Swift. Like, would you ever book a Taylor Swift? Well, probably not. But if she was doing her folklore music, well, yeah, that would be great. That would, not that we would ever get Taylor Swift,
Right.
but that level, of would we bring in a pop artist? And Joel was part and parcel of all that thinking of how do we expand the offerings of Cafe Lena, so it can attract a broader audience. The other thing too, and Joel was wonderful with this, was that we wanted to increase the quality of the performer. Okay, so what were some of the constraints that were limiting Cafe Lena from that? Well, the first constraint was that we didn't have a dedicated green room. Okay, and a dedicated bathroom. So they can get ready, do their makeup, whatever. Okay, so that was a constraint. The other constraint was was the size of the venue. Okay, and the ability to charge a certain ticket price. Well, after the renovation, we added about 20 some odd seats. It was a higher quality experience, and we said, oh, well, we'll be able to increase what we charge, so then we can support somebody like a Suzanne Vega, or like a Joan Osborne, or a Bella Fleck. So we did that, and then the next constraint was, well, how do we reach out to these people? How do we find them? And sure, we can start banging on the website door,
Sure.
and talking to their agent. But geez, wouldn't it be great if we had somebody who knew somebody? Oh, look, there's this Joel Moss guy
Yeah.
who
Yeah.
somehow knows somebody, or if he doesn't know somebody, he knows somebody who knows somebody, or if he doesn't know somebody who knows somebody, then people would just Google him, and they would go, hey, so this guy's got these statues on the wall. Maybe he's someone we want to talk to. And that was the cool thing about your brother, was that he did have all this experience. He had all this gravitas, but it wasn't, and this is important, it wasn't ego driven.
You're right. Absolutely. Yeah.
And he wasn't a name dropper. You'd be sitting around and we'd be in the studio, and a lot of times you're in the studio, you're waiting for stuff to render, or you're taking a break or whatever. All right, hey Joel, what's new? Well, I just got interviewed by NPR. Oh yeah, no kidding. You don't say. Cool. What was that about? Oh, I kind of invented this process. Oh, what process was that? Oh, we had to sync film to music. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Do you remember what project that was for? Yeah, yeah, that must have been that Talking Heads film. The guy said, Joel, did you mix the sound for Stop Making Sense? Oh, yeah, yeah, that was the name of it. And I looked at it and I said, Joel, dude, like, probably watched that 20 times from like age 16. to 36. Like I own the DVD of that. I remember friends taking a film class in high school where they analyzed that film. You know, I mean, it's the probably the most important concert film of the modern era of rock and roll. I said, how do I not know this, Joel? And his response was, it was work.
You know, it's interesting because in 2004, when he won the Grammy for Ray Charles' last
Yep.
album, um, my father had just passed away. We were sitting Shiva, and he said to my mother, um, I'm up for this award. Would you go with me to the Grammys? And my mother looked at him and she said, I have nothing to wear. And he said, well, I'll buy you something. And she said, no, no, you take Terry Lynn. The two of you should be going to
Yeah.
the Grammys
Sure.
together.
Sure. Right.
And I remember sitting there saying, you're for a Grammy? And he goes, oh, don't worry about it. So the night of the Grammys, I'm in Michigan with my mother and we're watching the Grammys and they win. And my mother and I just sit there saying, it's your son, my brother. Like, really?
Yeah.
And afterwards, we called him. We were so excited. And he goes, yeah, it's going to collect dust in the house. And it was like, but you're not excited? He
Yeah.
said, oh, it was great working on the project.
Right.
Don't get
Right.
me wrong.
Right.
He said, but, there was other great music this year as well. And
Yeah.
that's the brother I knew that,
Yeah.
when I found out that he worked on something or he won an award, and most of the awards he won, I didn't know anything about him until I was in his house and I saw them sitting on a table.
On the shelf. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Right. Right.
yeah,
Right. Yeah. 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 No, that totally tracks. He very much enjoyed the work. And I think that was very apparent in that he wanted to work with me at the time because I am not a Grammy Award winner,
it still
and I
could
don't
be.
well I don't expect to be anytime soon. But that being said, it was very much about the work, and I remember him kind of interviewing me up front of kind of saying, "Well, Jim, why are you doing this? Like, why are you spending all this time and energy and money?" On this. And I said, I just enjoy the work. I just enjoy the creative process. I enjoy working with artists and giving them a platform, for them to be able to record their artwork in a professional manner and to be able to distribute it, and to go through that process. And I think early on he realized that we were on the same page,
Right.
that the glamour schmammer, and he would tell stories every once in a while, we get him talking, of working with certain people, and he would talk about some folks like really difficult to work with.
Yeah.
Just some folks like, man, like really, I mean, he would say this person is not a good person, and I worked really hard on this and it was awful. And then some folks he would talk about just what a wonderful character they had, how great they were. He did the work on In the Heights, and I asked him, I said, so, and we did. I don't want to characterize it that this was the majority of our relationship. It would just be every once in a while we'd have this conversation again, and the downtime, waiting for a mix to run or something, or waiting for an artist or whatever, tuning up. And I said, so what was it like working with Lin-Manuel Miranda? Like what was that all about? And he had a great response. His response was, he's even nicer in real life
Yeah.
than he
Yeah.
comes across on TV.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. Well,
Yeah.
it's funny. This goes back, oh, probably at least 30 years. My brother calls me up on a Sunday afternoon. He says, are you going to be home today? I said, yeah, why? He said, well, a friend of mine is doing some concert work at Blossom, and that's just down the road from you, right? And I said, yeah. He said, well, he may stop by. I said, who's your friend? He said, you'll recognize him if he comes by. So it's like, really? Like, am I supposed to go change my clothes, put on my makeup?
Right.
What am I supposed to do? And I mentioned it to my husband, and my husband goes, your brother's probably in town. He's going to ring the doorbell. Okay, fine. So it's about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. My doorbell rings. I go and I answer it. And there's this really scruffy looking guy. And I'm recognizing him, but it's like, who are you? And I said, hello. And he said, you must be Karen. And I said, yes. And he sticks out his hand. He says, I'm Rob Reiner.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And it was like, wait a second, you're at
Right.
my door? He
Yeah,
said,
right.
yeah, your brother said I could stop here because I could probably use your bathroom before I get to the venue.
That's awesome.
Like,
Yeah, yeah,
whatever. And
yeah,
our whole time together was less than 10 minutes.
yeah,
Knocked on the door, used the bathroom, said hello, I'm leaving. Oh, and then he asked us if we wanted to come to Blossom that night. And I didn't have a babysitter. And I said, probably not, but thank
yeah.
you. And he goes, well, I'll see you again.
Right.
I called Joel that night and I said, what was that all about? He said, he needed to use a clean bathroom. I knew your house was clean.
We clean. Yeah, right, right. Yeah, yeah,
So
right, right. Yeah. Yeah.
that's what I knew about my brother, that
Yeah.
he wasn't going to tell me it was Rob Reiner. He didn't want me to go all fangirl on
Yeah,
it.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Um, and again, when he would talk about some of the work that the two of you did together, especially Cassandra Kubinski's
Yep.
last recording,
Yep.
he said, I heard it. She was really good, but I had this idea. I had this idea of just making it bigger.
Yep.
And I understand that you weren't so sure that was a good idea.
Oh, she's well, let's remember. I mean, I didn't want to make it huge. I thought it still had to be intimate, but I was certainly was on board with a string section, and I think that these were ideas that we kind of all simultaneously had. Whether or not like one person said, "Oh, I'm in," I came up with the string section idea. Again, that wasn't anything that like your brother and I both subscribe to. Imagine how much work we can get done if we don't care about who gets the credit, you
Love it.
know? And so that was that we always agreed with that approach. But no, I mean, we thought it should be intimate. We thought it should be featuring her voice, her piano, and a string and accompaniment. If it was going to go into like orchestra territory and drums and stuff like that, yeah, no, no, we wouldn't have done that. That would have been a mistake. Yeah, it was interesting. Yeah, I mean, Cass and I had worked on and off, and we're good friends, and we were kind of like a lull in our projects at that point. And but we did a show together at the cafe, and so Joel was recording it, and she broke out her version of Both Sides now. So that's a favorite song of Joel's. I mean,
Yep.
it's a favorite song of a lot of people's.
Right.
And I mean, it's if you're going to look at probably one of the top, I don't know, 50 American songs written in the last 50 years, that's it. That's one of them. It's
Yep.
probably, I mean, if it's not in the top 50, if it's not in the top 10, it's certainly in the top 50 when you think about like the composition and the impact that it has. And it's been done to death. That's that's the other thing about it. And then we'll talk about it in a second. Joel has real direct connections to this material. So it was interesting. So she played it and she had her own arrangement and she had her own approach. And so Joel's in the back room listening, and he comes out and goes, I can't believe how good this was. Like he was shocked. And I thought it had something as well. He was really, really into it because she's taking a different approach. And again, you've got this song that's been done 100,000 times, and even reinterpreted by Joni herself.
Yep.
Joni has two great versions of it. She has original and then she has that orchestral version. Um, so so Joel got on board and we said, all right, well, Joel, let's do this project together, and so Cass was the artist. We all considered ourselves co-producers, but I took the role as really being an engineer on that, and the mix engineer and the recording engineer, and Joel oversaw the whole thing. And I hadn't recorded a string section before, a string quartet, so that was helpful because I would have had to, Google and read books, and it's more convenient to have Joel in the room than to figure it out. And a lot of this stuff too is like, this is like anything in life, it's like, I can figure this stuff out, but it's really nice to have someone around who's done this and they know what it's supposed to be.
Right.
Because when you're dialing into something, whatever it may be, whether it be recording arts, whether it be painting, whether it be writing an essay, whether it be writing an email, you've done it a bunch of times, so you have a target in mind. So when you have a target, when you know where you're going, that makes
Sure.
achieving something easier. And Joel provided that target so many times, like, oh yeah, now you can do better, or hey Joel, I don't think this sounds good enough. Good, no, 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 this is where you're exactly where you need to be. So yeah, so Joel championed it, and we worked together, the three of us. We had to hire a couple of arrangers to get the string section together, and coordinating the string section. We really lucked out because it happened to align with the mostly modern festival here in Saratoga Springs. So we had access to world-class string players. And we got the session set up. I think it was like either a Saturday or Sunday morning, and Joel was getting a little annoyed with me because he's like, you need to have four chairs. I'm like, yeah, and I know I have four chairs somewhere. And he's like, this is starting in 40 minutes. Yeah, we'll find the chairs. It's all Yeah, and what was neat about the experience, and Joel felt a really, really close kinship to that song because, as he revealed to us, he used to live next door to Joni Mitchell
Yeah.
in Laurel Canyon, like
Yep.
literally next door. And then when she recorded, he told us that when she recorded the chorus in the Circle Game, that was like, just in her house or something, and he was hanging around, and so he's in the room singing the Circle Game, you know and I was like, well, that's really cool, Joel, that's really cool. Did you ever run into Joni again? Well, it's funny you should ask. I did, because and when she went and recorded that orchestra record, she was doing it in London, and I happened to be working in the same studio. Come on, no kidding, no, I'm not kidding. And then so I go, and I had to like talk to the manager. They wouldn't let me in. Eventually I got through, and we had a nice conversation, and she goes, hey, I'm recording the Circle Game. Do you want to sing in the chorus? Sure. So that's neat,
Yeah.
what's interesting too is that, and this is part of this industry, he did a lot of uncredited work. When he was younger, he did a lot of work for hire,
Yeah.
where they were just paying him the money. He would talk about how he couldn't stand to listen to Hotel California because he was in charge of doing all the edits, all the tape edits, where he took a razor blade,
Yep.
and so now he would say, yeah, I hear it I hear it in a restaurant, and all I hear is
Yeah.
because I can hear all my mistakes, all my
Right.
edits. So one day I put on the fancy headphones and I listened. I didn't hear anything. I was like, I think you're making it up. I think that's like your PTSD of having to deal with that band.
Well, he was a lot of time he was his own worst critic. Um,
Sure, sure, yeah,
and most of us are. I do have to credit him the day that I called him and said that I wanted to start podcasting. He said, why? And I said,
yeah, yeah,
well, I could ask you the same question, why did you teach yourself how to play the trumpet and the guitar and the banjo? Why did you get into music? I
yeah.
said, it's just something that I've always wanted to do. And he goes, then why are you telling me? Just do it.
Just do it. Right,
And I
right.
said, well, what if I'm not good at it? He said, then get better.
Yeah,
And
right, right.
that's, I've carried that all along. It's like I go
Yeah,
back and I listen to the podcast I did 15 years ago, and yeah, did I really do that? But then I look at some I did 5 years later, just a little bit better, and
yeah,
10 years
yeah,
later. And so I really did understand what he was saying. Just do it,
yeah. Just do
and
it.
do it at your best at that moment. And you know what? You can criticize yourself. The only way to criticize yourself is just try to do it better the next time. And
Right.
that's part of the reason why I wanted to share his stories, because so many of us know only this much about Joel. But when we
Yeah.
put all those stories together, we really find out the human being that he really was. He wasn't just the guy who won awards, the guy who, you know, was delivering newspapers while he was trying to start his music career.
Sure.
Um, I remember him telling me one day, well, don't be so proud of me because I get up at 3 o'clock in the morning to deliver newspapers. And it was like, well, then I'm even more proud of you
Yeah. Yeah.
because
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
you're seeking your dream.
Yeah.
So sadly, his last day of life, you guys spent most of that together working.
We did.
And no concept from either one of you that anything was wrong.
No,
No.
no, 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 no. I mean, I had noticed a little bit, because we spent so much time together, you know. I kind of noticed over the last 3 to 6 months that he was always a very fit guy,
Yeah.
and he was always very health conscious. I can tell you too that certainly the pandemic and the political situation took a real toll on your brother.
Right. Yes.
You know, he was very involved with that, and very involved with his thinking on that. And he thought about it a lot, and he had a very, I mean, he was a real intellectual guy.
Yes.
And so, when you look at, you know there's a real assault on intellectualism. And so it really bothered him. And I noticed that he'd put on weight, which was odd,
Yes.
um, for the decade I'd known him, because he was always remarkably fit. Um, and and so I had noticed that, but otherwise, no. I mean, we worked we got together on Friday for lunch with a friend. We had a recording session on Saturday. We did editing on Sunday, and Monday we worked on a Caffe Lena system. And then, we said, all right, see you later, pal. Every once in a while, it was funny. At the beginning, we would, high five each other, we'd shake hands, and towards the end,
Yep.
we'd hug each other.
Yep. Well, he was a hugger. And
Yeah. And I am not.
but when there's a hugger around you, you
Yeah.
can't stop them. You can't stop
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
So,
And that was just the closeness of our friendship. And I really consider myself really lucky that I had somebody who was such a good close friend of mine, who was 20 years my senior, that we had so much in common, and that we had so much that we agreed upon, and this shared love of this creative art work that we would do together. Um, and that's a real kind of blessing in
yes.
my life. Um, because it's you know you, you say go chase wisdom, be friends with people of different generations, because you'll learn so much. but
Absolutely.
that but that's kind of hard to affect in
Yep.
reality. you know um and so we just had this shared mission, that really connected us.
Well, one thing about my brother Joel, he really was ageless. Um,
Hmm.
you know, he didn't necessarily speak of his age, he didn't hide it, but he didn't, you know, go around telling everybody how old he was. In fact, my last birthday when I turned 75, I called him and said, I'm 75 years old. And he goes, and yeah. And I said, well, isn't that exciting? And he goes, I guess. He said, but you're the same person you were yesterday when you were
Yeah.
74.
Yeah.
Um, and so those are the beautiful memories I have of him.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm so glad to hear your stories. And I'm sure, there is this connection that my son and I developed with you a couple years ago at Thanksgiving.
Yep.
Um, I love your wife and your daughter. Your daughter is just
Thanks.
remarkable.
No,
Um,
thank you.
and I know when we come back to Saratoga, we will be looking for you and
Yeah.
connecting with you. And um,
And we're going to get Alex's song recorded. We're going to get it done. It's
he's
the email is pinned
yeah,
now on my email.
he's chomping at the bit.
Okay, good. Yeah,
In
yeah.
fact, he just drove in this morning from Columbus, and he said to me, um, "Mom, I'm so tired. I have to lie down and take a nap. But just let Jim know,
Yes.
we're going to carry on Uncle
Yeah.
Joel's legacy." So
Yes. Yeah. 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 No,
I
we're definitely going to get to it. It's just, we all got a lot of irons in the fire right now, but we'll get to it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And right now, nobody's traveling too far with this
Sure.
horrible winter weather. I'm not a
Sure.
winter person. So
Oh, okay. Yeah.
thank you, Jim, for joining me and
Oh,
sharing your
thank you.
stories. And we'll talk soon. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so
Bye
much.
bye.
Yep. Bye-bye.